Okay, and welcome back, students who are taking math for business and finance and math applications. And we're working through the Chapter 18 drill problems. Even though it says odd numbered problems, you're kind of like being forced to do the rest of the problems. So, like for example, we're going to do 17 and then we would do 19, but because you needed consider 18 in order to do 19, we'll end up doing 17, 18, and 19. All right, and hopefully we'll do this all in just this video. So let me get down to the slide. All right, here's 17. All right, it says complete the following, round your answers to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so let's see, we have average inventory at cost is 14,000. Average inventory at retail is 21,540. So immediately this is just because I'm looking at an average inventory at cost and an average inventory at retail, immediately I'm starting to think along the lines of inventory turnover. Okay, um, but let's see what the rest of the information says here. So because those are part of the inventory turnover calculations. So we have net sales of 70,000 and cost of goods sold, all right, which leads us into ending inventory turnover at cost and inventory turnover at retail. So what's our inventory turnover at cost? Okay. That's our cost of goods sold over our average inventory at cost. And so we take the 49,800 and we divide that by 14,000, and that gives us $3.56. I'm not $3.56, I'm sorry, 3.56. That's how many times we turn it over, okay? That's our cost of goods sold, 49.8, and our average inventory is 14,000, so we turn that inventory over at cost 3.56 times. Now, for the at retail, it's our net sales over our average inventory at retail. Okay, again, notice the two formulas, all right? Think about what they're doing, all right? And, just notice the differences. And that's how you learn it. You don't have to be memorizing, certain, different formulas. I mean, if you hear me through this, as I've been starting with this problem, it's a little bit, to a certain extent, I've been stuttering mentally, okay? Because right from the start, I'm like looking and I'm thinking, I haven't memorized these, okay? I work with concepts, and I have an average inventory at cost, and then when I saw average inventory at retail, and immediately I'm starting to think, okay, where did I see that for? Okay, I'm talking about inventory, and it's an average, and I know that something has to do with cost and retail, and all of a sudden I started thinking about inventory turnover. And sure enough, now I'm looking at sales, I'm looking at cost of goods sold. So yes, I am looking at inventory turnover. And what does that mean to me? Well, I take my cost of goods sold and I divide it by my average inventory. Because remember, the cost of goods sold is what you're selling. If my average inventory, is what I have on hand, but what I sell, how many times am I selling it? Am I selling it? I've sold 3.5 times quicker than what my average inventory is. Okay? And so now when I'm thinking about sales, well, it's how many more sales I've made, as compared to my average at inventory retail. And so really, when I'm looking at average inventory at retail and cost, I mean, if I see average inventory, I know it's cost. So I know that I'm dealing with cost of goods sold. It's just that simple. If I'm looking at retail, well, obviously I can't use cost of goods sold because cost of goods sold is what we paid for. It's not what we're selling it for. So I know I have to use the net sales in the numerator, right? And that's how I put this stuff together in my head, okay? I'm not memorizing it. Now, I mean, yes, you can memorize. Don't misunderstand me. I mean, and if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. And there's no right or wrong to it, okay? But, you know, my old brain, you know, I'm like, you know, Kelly Bundy on Married with Children, who in that one episode, she had to remember stuff and they put one thing in and, you know, and she couldn't take any more and out came the, you know, winner, you know, Al, you know, scoring 4 touchdowns and she missed the question, right? Well, that's me. You know, when I'm old here, and these are just, you know, I think through the ideas, and this is the way I put stuff together in my head. So, with that said, I have my net sales at 70,000, and I have my average inventory at retail of 21,540. And so when I divide one by the other, I end up with 3.25 as my answer. So that's how I get my inventory turnovers. And of course, the higher the number, the better. Okay, but these two numbers in and of themselves don't mean anything. You know, I mean, yeah, if I sit here and I'm looking at 3.5, and 3.25, well, obviously that's better than 1. Okay, meaning, you know, I bought my inventory and I sold it once during that entire period of time. Right, but notice I had to choose the number 1. Okay, but if I just stand here and I look at 3.5 or 3.25 in and of itself, they don't mean anything. You have to have some other number to use as a comparison. So you would, you know, if I'm looking at 356 or 3.25, and let's say this is for, I'd say, the month of May for 2015, right? Well, to be able to compare, I would probably go back to May of 2014 and compare that month's with this month to see if I'm doing any better. Or, you know, I might use, you know, a year to date, right? So I'd have figures that go from January all the way through, you know, May, and, you know, use that as a comparison. Okay, so the number, you know, obviously you want you know, a higher number because that means you're selling a lot more. Okay, and you're turning your inventory over more and more and more, but it doesn't mean anything really unless you're looking at it from the, you know, in comparison to something else. Okay, all right. And the only reason why I babbled through all of that was because, remember, this is one of our ratios. If you back in chapter 16, we were looking at ratios, and they pushed this one off to chapter 18 because it had to do with inventory. Okay, but that's part of analyzing your financial information, is taking a good hard look at your inventory and how much you're turning it over. All right. All right. Last problem. 18 and 19. Assume the following: $90,000 of overhead. That's our overhead expense, right? To be distributed. So this here is the, you know, is the distribution of the overhead. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to be able to decide, you know, figure out, you know, how much of this 90,000 should go to each department. Okay, so in order to do that, we have to add up our square feet to get a total square feet. So 10 and 30 is 40,000. Okay, and just like in the previous chapter, you know, way back in chapter 4, 5, or 6, whatever it was, when we were talking about revenues less cost of goods sold, gave me a gross profit, and we could say these had dollar figures. We were able to also convert those over to percentages, right? Because why? The revenue, if our cost of goods sold and our gross profit were based upon revenue, our revenue would be 100%. And so we would take our cost of goods sold and divide it by our revenue in order to get the cost of goods sold percent. And then we do the same thing. Well, we can actually do the math. Since this is 100 less this percentage would give us this percentage, or vice versa. We can take the cost, the gross profit, and divide that by the revenue, and that would give us, our gross profit percentage. I realize I went over that, and you're probably tired of me telling you that, but this is no different. Okay, we're looking at, here was solid dollars, dollar amounts, and here's percentages. Well, what are we doing? Well, for distribution of overhead, we're doing the exact same thing here. We're taking a total and we're dividing, and these are in square feet, so they're like hard numbers. So we're taking our department A, because we're talking about ratios here. Ratio is one number divided by another number. Okay, so we're taking our 10,000 for department A, and we're dividing it by the 40,000, because we're assuming the 40,000 is 100%. I mean, look at our pie here. This is 100%. If this portion is A and this portion is B, well, from a number perspective, A plus B has to equal the total, right? And from a percentage perspective, the percent plus the percent has to equal the 100%, right? So all we're doing is we're taking that 10,000 and dividing it by the 40,000, which is 100% of it, in order to get our ratio. And that gives us 0.25. And then we do the same exact thing for department B. We take these. Well, I don't have to do it, because I could take, I know that 1 less 0.25 gives me 0.75. Or I could take the 30,000 and divide it by the 40,000 and get the same thing, 0.75, right? Two different ways. And of course, they both equal 1, right? So now that we know what our ratios are, what our percentages are, because remember 0.25 is 25%, 0.75 is 75%, we multiply that times our total overhead, right, in order to figure out how much for that department. So we have 90,000 times the 0.25, and that gives me, let's see here, $22,500 to be allocated to department A. We could do the same thing with B, 90,000 times 0.75, and that would give me 67.5. And of course, my double check is when I add them both up, they both should come out, that should come out to 90,000, right? And we know we're right, okay? And so now we've just, that's the amount of our, overhead allocation. If we had additional departments, all we would do, it's just an expansion of this idea, this concept, okay? I could still keep, here we have, let's as an example, I still have this 90,000 to be distributed, but let's say I added a department C, okay? And let's say that's, I don't know, 15,000, okay? Well, now of course, I'm going to keep those numbers, they're bringing them right in blue here. Of course, these are going to change, right? Because we have an additional department. And instead of 15, I'm going to make it 20. Okay, so 10, 30, and 20 is 60,000. Okay, well now, when I take 10,000 and I divide by 60. 10 divided by 60, I get 0.167. If I have 30,000 divided by 60, I end up with 0.5. And if I have 20,000 divided by 60, I have 0.333. Okay, so in my hypothetical example here, my ratios now are 0.167, 0.500, and 0.333, which still all total 1.00, right? And then all I'm doing again is just taking the 90,000 and multiplying it by 90,000. Let me rewrite that real quick. 90,000 times 0.167, and that gives me 15,030, and 90,000 times 0.5 is 45,000, and 90,000 times 0.333 is 90 times 0.333 is 29,970. Okay, and of course they all add up to the 90,000. Okay, so yeah, I could have multiplied here, but once I multiplied here and I multiplied here, I could have added those together and then subtracted from the 90,000 in order to get to 29,970. Just different ways of doing it, but they end up being the same. So the point being here is that when you're doing a distribution, it doesn't matter how many departments you have. It's the same process, you just have these extra steps. So if I had 7 departments, well, I'd have to list them all and I have to do the math, the multiplication, division, set the ratio 7 times. I'd have to multiply, 7 times, and my double checks are everything should add up to the 1, okay, and should add up to whatever I have for my total to be distributed. Okay. All right, so that's it for the drill problems, and I'll see you all in the videos for the word problems. And again, if you don't understand something, watch the video again, and telephone an instructor if you still don't get it.